Detective.
Ancient sands, heed my command.
You know what happens to a toad when it's struck by lightning?
And reclaim these relics of hatred.
Morphin' time! The same thing that happens to everything else.
If the apocalypse comes, beat me. Beat me. Beat me. Beat me.
Welcome to Real Hot Nerd Shit, a pop culture podcast where real hot nerds talk about real nerd shit. I'm your host, Ryan.
And I'm your co-host, Shauna.
And today we're here to talk about Agatha All Along, the series finale, episodes 8 and 9, with our very rich Oopsie.
Hey, y'all.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Ooksie's running this wig into the dirt, although not this Halloween's wig. This is obviously from previous wigs, because what was your Halloween costume with us this year? Our Coven of Witches?
Nancy Downs, and my husband
Work.
was Sarah, very lesbian coded.
Very much so. Sean and I went as Willow and Dark Willow from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which inspired a hysterical, what do you mean? I hate gay Halloween. What do you mean you're both Willow Rose? On the off chance that there's someone listening to this podcast that doesn't know what Shauna and I look like, neither of us really looks like Willow Rosenberg, although one of us definitely looks a lot more like Willow Rosenberg than the other.
Look,
in this instance, it was me.
that's true. I was good. I'm glad you said it, because I was going to agree with you. I was like, that's the end.
Thank you.
Look, you did do a great, like, your makeup work on like the veins and the lines was fantastic.
Thanks. I mean, I was relatively satisfied with them. I wish I would have figured out a way to make them like, I mean, I tried really hard to like reapply and set it and shit, but I'm sorry, Oopsie shaved his entire face. Like I spent like 35 minutes rushedly applying, blue eyeliner or purple eyeliner to my face to make fake veins, and Oopsie is mug bald.
I beat my face to the gods.
Yeah.
It was, and regretted it almost immediately.
It was really good. Your outfit, I mean, I'm going to be honest, all of our outfits were really, really good. James's wig was so unsettlingly good.
Which is why he wanted to wear that into the ground the whole weekend. He was like, for Halloween, I'm using this wig again. And I was like, well, I'm not shaving.
Absolutely.
So we will pivot to something else.
I learned my lesson shaving for a costume when I did it for drag, like how in 16 or 17, and like 2016, 2017. And I simply will never do it again. I commit, like I was Willow Rosenberg grieving her partner that was murdered in front of her, and thusly so moved emotionally that I turned to the darkest arts, but I will not shave my face for that. I simply won't. Nope.
I also tried to embody my character. I was more than a little gay.
You started experimenting with women. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, it was that night it was inspired. I never before. It was like, ooh, what a great idea.
Wow, there's a first time for everything,
It's all that chaperone. She just has all the lesbianism in the air. So I was like, what a great idea.
Wait,
Which, by the way, did you see her on SNL, by the way?
Wait, Oopsie, what did you say?
I caught her one performance. Yeah, it was John Mulaney, and she was a musical guest. So I didn't see the whole thing, but I saw her the Pink Pony Club song that she did.
Yeah.
Oh, and now she has a new song.
Did you hear the new song?
No, I haven't.
It's so good. Oh, it's very
so
good. You should definitely listen to it.
It's on my list.
It's cute. It's a country song. I mean, all I'm gonna say is Beyonce's impact, but it is a country song, and she sang the fuck out of it. Like, her movement around like fame and how we've seen her like step away and then now like re-enter is I'm really happy that she continues to just be like, leave me the fuck alone. but also don't forget, like, that's
Listen
all
to
just weird. Yeah, exactly. That's just weird background shit that's happening. Listen to my music; it's good, and I'm gonna sing it live.
Yeah, I knew she was going to release something because she
And
was hinting at it for I think this week or the last week. I think she like put something on Instagram like I think it's time for the bitch to change or something like that. And so I was like, well, this can't be like literal. I'm assuming it's new music.
Right. And in front of the Agatha finale, we got a trailer. Marvel, whoever has taken their marketing over, is doing really well. It was very smart. They dropped a preview trailer for like the next year and a half of upcoming projects. And I mean, most of them we knew about, but some of them we were excitedly reminded were still happening. Oh, here, let's pull it up real quick.
it is immediately just like we thought it would be.
So we get footage from Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man coming out in January, Daredevil, Born Again in March, which again, all three of us have agreed. Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock works. He's so hot. He's so hot. The encounter we get between him and Kingpin at that diner immediately, flood the basement.
I'm glad they kept him as Kingpin and they're including him and
He's
continue.
such a good Kingpin.
Yeah, like
Oh,
Vincent D'Onofrio.
Vincent D'Onofrio, yeah. He just really hits like, and I liked Michael Clark Duncan because I think he had the physical imposingness and like really
Totally.
felt like someone was like, oh, I can see both why you're in charge of a criminal organization and you could kick someone's ass. Like that was what Michael Clark Duncan really brought both of those. But I think Vincent D'Onofrio does too, and a more like I think he has like that savvy business like he's such a good actor. I'm very, gosh, I'm so excited for more of that. I'm really glad they decided to bring. I mean, they brought John Bernthal back as the Punisher, which I thought was such a good decision because I thought he
Yes.
also did a great. He was a great Punisher. Ah,
Yeah, agreed. I also only ever saw clips of The Punisher. I never watched
God.
the whole, but he's a great Frank
See,
Castle.
I only watched it in Daredevil too, like, and just in that way, it was like one of those gap shows that I missed. But like the
Right.
Defenders with Jessica Jones and Luke Cage,
Yeah.
and like,
I, confession, I never finished Luke Cage.
interesting. I don't think I watched the second season, but I felt that was like where I fell off a bunch of shows, like
Yeah.
because I think my biggest problem is that sometimes the Netflix shows were very grimdark in a way
Yeah.
that I just kind of sometimes have to be in the right mood to be like, I'm gonna watch this like everything sucks like world. Like
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, I
I
can't
never.
remember the ending of Luke Cage. Like I think I know I watched it, but I remember it was a hard watch because either I watched it at the wrong time or I was genuinely just falling asleep because it wasn't
mm,
great writing at the end because they
Mhm.
got axed after that, and I think they knew it was coming beforehand.
And I never even bothered with Iron Fist. Like, I
It's
never, no, fundamentally, I refuse. Like, you broke the cardinal, like, contemporary rule. Like, we're not just casting white dudes for characters. And, like, I get, that character exists, and I think he exists as Iron Fist one time, but, like, come on, man. Come on, we can do better than that.
yeah, I think that it would have been very easy to be like, you know what, this is something that in this moment in history we can change and like kind of and then like positively
Right.
retcon to a different way. And like
Right.
I get both where it came from, but like, you know what? What if instead of doing the
Right.
same like blonde white guy again, like we
Right.
could just do something a little bit different?
Well, I guess they
Would have
kind of did
really.
that into that, like
At
because
the end, right?
at the end, yeah, they ended up like his like the person, his romantic interest, Colleen Wing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She ends up getting the like power of the Iron Fist at the end of it,
Which,
Mm,
which I was
like
like,
that.
okay, I'm not mad about that.
Yeah. I'm sure that, incels somewhere are mad that it's a girl, but, you know, at least
Always.
it moved in the right direction in terms of some representation. But also, we're getting What If season 3 before the end of the year? It wasn't in that trailer though, was it?
It was. Remember, you
Was
Yeah,
see
because there was the Marvel Zombies.
Right.
that's another episode. Like that's like a whole nother show that they're doing. But there was
Oh,
Yeah.
is it? Oh, I thought it was part of What
maybe-
If.
No, I think it's separate because it's like a whole
Ooh,
part,
okay.
it's like a whole separate trailer that they did with it.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Somewhere,
So-
Dara did a group costume for all of us where we were all Marvel zombies. And like it was
Sick.
like made out of foam. Gosh, I wonder there's gotta be pictures somewhere of it. That's ridiculous. Like
Who were you?
just unlock
What?
that.
When was this?
This was like 11, 12 years ago, like
Dang.
going to a Comic-Con way back when. Like, I'm gonna ponder, as I don't even remember who I was in it.
Yeah.
Like,
Things
literally have no
that
idea.
get pushed out.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it was like maybe like Iron Man, but I can't remember if I just remember the Iron Man mask or if I was like what I wore.
Right.
Yeah.
We also got animation with Eyes of Wakanda. We got like a quick look at that. Really excited. Honestly, I was genuinely surprised that one didn't get axed or pushed.
It kind of did get axed in a way because I think originally when it was pitched, it was supposed to be a live action show, and
Okay.
instead they made it into like an animated show. But apparently, like rumor up around the internet, it's like still canon to like the MCU timeline.
Sure.
Okay.
Like
I
in
don't
the
mind
world
that.
that we're in now, like so anything that we've seen like within Wakanda, like it's still like within like our universe that we've been in so far. Just in
I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
I don't mind. I like a little change it up. Like shit can be animated. Then Marvel Zombies is in October 2025. And then Wonder Man is December 2025. Let's talk about Yahya Abdul Mateen and how I want him to punch a hole through my midsection and just fuck that instead, because
Carry on.
he's so beautiful. He's so beautiful.
The
So beautiful.
Boys.
Is he in The Boys?
No, there was just a character who liked to make holes that he could fuck in The Boys, and it just
Oh my
made me
god,
think
you're
of that.
so fucking yeah. Yep. Sure. Sure.
Well, I wasn't going to elaborate until you, because I was like, but that was what made me think of it. I was like, oh my god, I forgot about that. That
Yeah.
show's so weird. Anyways,
Or did you get caught up? Was it you that just
I
said you
did.
finished?
Yes, I just got caught up with the most recent season, and I'm very
Oh.
happy. Like, it was a great binge.
It was. It was a great season. Did we start talking about when we were together the conspiracy? My oh wow, this assassination attempt feels familiar.
Oh yeah, I remember you mentioning something of that, and I was like, so I was kind of keeping an eye out for that moment. I was like, but you're right
Yeah.
though. Like, gosh,
I
what
need
a-
to make a note that I'm gonna talk about a spoiler when I'm editing this. I'll probably edit it like and listen to it in real time. But so in The Boys, this most recent season, now that all three of us are caught up, Uxie, you're caught up, right? You were silent. Sorry.
Yes.
Yes. So in the most recent season, Homelander is positioned as sort of like Trump, if we're being just like, if we're just calling it what it is, you know, he's this like actual demagogue that declares himself as superior to humans, and people are like, fuck yeah, we love that. Like, his lawlessness is like super attractive to people for whatever reason. So these two camps, like the Homelander camp and then his nemesis, Starlight?
Starlight, yeah, and the
Yeah.
Starlighters.
The Starlighters, which are basically just kind of positioned as like, you know, crazy conservatives and
The woke liberals, yeah,
the woke
like
liberals, right?
there's
Right.
literally like the one lady who's like the like Fox News spouting superhero, like
Yeah. Yes. Oh my God. Yes. Cherry. Her name was Cherry Bomb, and then she changed
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, and
I
she
think
actually, I think,
so.
even said that she based her character off of Marjorie Taylor Greene and like
That's
tried to like.
hysterical.
I'm like,
And
yes.
she's queer in real life.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. So in that they stage this, they essentially like set up a mass riot when there's an event happening between the Starlighters and the Homelanders, and they have this big clash that is orchestrated by this character that is like superhumanly smart. And she uses his fans, like these people that are obsessed with him, willing to do anything for him. She like recruits them and is like, you would do anything for Homelander, so like we're gonna basically murder you. And then she they get beaten to death, and then the speedster like carries the bodies over to the scene of the crime, so of course no one can see that someone came in and intervened and dropped off these dead bodies. So then they make it seem as though the Starlighters are like these crazy violent, like they're so intolerant, blah blah blah, but it was actually just it was a plant. But originally that episode was supposed to be about an assassination attempt. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah. And I think they changed it then because
There was a real assassination
Yeah,
attempt.
it was like 2 days after it, like the real assassination on Trump happened. They had to like release they had to make a pre-show statement saying that this has nothing to do with the events that just happened. This is like no
Right.
relation.
Right. Yeah. It just, no, we don't even have to talk about. You said when, like, it was a couple days after the real assassination attempt, and my gut instinct was to be like, no, it wasn't.
No, I mean
Interesting choice of the word real. Yeah. Right. Like, I realize I have sometimes, like, I'm just not stupid or naive enough to pretend like these things aren't real possibilities. So I'm not going to pretend like I don't kind of think that, but also I don't want to think that.
well, and
But
I think there's
also,
something like everything in our culture is kind of teaching us to be cynical, teaching us
right,
to be disbelieving, teaching us that it's really hard to tell what is true, what isn't, what's a work, what's a shoot. Like it's
right.
hard to know where so many things fall, and I think intentionally so, especially as our internet deteriorates and it makes it more easy to obfuscate the truth.
Yes. Point literally, Shauna, exactly. But what's funny is we were talking about Wonder Man, not the boys. And I said he should punch a hole in the middle of me, and that's how we got to the boys. But anyways, yeah, I have to be honest. The only thing I really know about Wonder Man is that he like is with Wanda for a little while, and the Vision
very
is
heavily intertwined. Like it's like this whole thing
Is
where
it?
she meets, I think Wonder Man's introduced first. He is injected with like a version, like a super steroid out version of the super soldier serum,
right.
and he is like an undercover villain in the West Coast Avengers, I think is what it is. And
Mhm.
long story short, he has to keep taking these injections, and if he doesn't, he dies. He finds out, turns into a leaf, becomes a superhero. Eventually, he stops taking the injection so many times, or like just like weans off of it, and he ends up going comatose. And then Hank
Oof.
Pym, I think, takes they start monitoring his brain waves, and those brain waves, like the map or schematics of it all, they use those to make Vision. So
Right.
Vision's brain waves are based off of um
Wonder Man.
Wonder Man, which is why it's like a whole thing in Vision's storyline where he creates his family when oh my god, what's his brother's name that's a villain? Death. No, he has Wonder Man has a brother that goes villainous, and he goes after
Mhm.
Vision's family, and that's like it's like Wanda,
Oh,
Vision,
right.
Wonder Man are also like just heavily intertwined somehow. So it's kind of cool that they're finally bringing him in.
Yeah. Um, and he's an actor in some of the properties, right? Like he's a famous person. Yeah. I love that. That's the one I'm the most excited for. I'm definitely excited for um Eyes of Wakanda and Daredevil. I'm curious about the Spider-Man cartoon.
I'm
Do you
over
all have
it.
any? Yeah, I mean, I want it all. To be clear, always, I want
Yeah,
it
but
Well,
there's
all.
just like
Spider-Man's great in
how
cartoon form. Like,
Yes,
yeah, but there's like so many. Like choose a different superhero to do. Like I miss the Avengers animated series. Like that shit was so good. Like I'm just very much
yeah.
over all of these different variations of Spider-Man animated shows.
well, see,
Like
that's where I
so
ultimately liked. Did you watch Ultimate Spider-Man?
I did.
And I like the like little team where he's like the high school group with like,
Yes,
Luke
I like that one.
Cage and yeah, I thought that was a very fun one and has a great like Spider-Man sense of humor. Like as someone who like really enjoys Spider-Man, though I think that with, you know, it's time for a Miles Morales show. And I understand that he's
Yeah,
like the star of the movies, and so they probably don't want to double down. But again, there could be a million Peter Parker projects. Why can't there
right.
also be a million Miles Morales Spider-Man
Yes.
Totally,
projects?
That's what I mean.
totally.
Like switch characters or switch different spider people and like
Yeah.
focus
Yeah,
on them and build that world, I guess, rather than having to like start over from square one at during every single animated series where like he's a teen, he's figuring it out. Look at
right,
his like janked up costume.
right. Yep. And the one that I also forgot is Ironheart, which who did we learn is debuting in Ironheart? Is Storm coming in Ironheart allegedly?
Is she?
Allegedly, it's Mephisto, but I don't believe that. I'll believe it when I see it.
Oh,
Well,
yeah, because isn't
Mephisto.
it? Shut up, Shauna. Shut up. Whatever you're gonna say, keep it. Keep it. Raggedy. Keep it. No, make it. Whatever it is, keep it. Let me hear. Let me hear. Let me hear.
No, I'm sure. This is the one. Mephisto's definitely coming this time. Like Lucy with the football, but it's Mephisto.
Part 4.
No,
Uh,
well, I think really and we're gonna get into this with our Agatha talk, but I think really they were so close to saying Mephisto the whole time. I think it's just like we are just one Mephisto reveal away.
yeah.
It was like they clearly wanted to. I could tell that was what was written out was all the Mephisto references. I think we
I
are due.
definitely I thought that the curse revealed monster was Mephisto in the trailer. I was positive. I was so positive. I was like, that's it. That's the fucking devil.
This is
Somehow we're
right. Like
getting
it
that.
always feels like, ooh, this could really be. And the joke's going to be on me because at some point Mephisto is going to show up,
Right.
or I'm just going to get to keep making this joke forever. And either way, I
Forever.
win. So
Because what I heard is that the whole thing is like magic versus science. Like
Yes. The
that's
hand is
the
supposed to
and
be like the big bad, and he's supposed to get. He allegedly has made a deal with Mephisto, and that's how his villainous career starts.
who's the hand, like the person that creates the hand?
No, it's like an actual. Oh my god, what is his name?
Because the hand exists. I mean, if Charlie Cox's Daredevil is MCU, then doesn't that mean
the
that the
hand
hand
has
already
already
exists?
been. The hand was absolutely
Yeah,
was in a season of Daredevil. It was the season with
right.
Elektra.
With Elektra, yes, and it was so good. The front runner of those Marvel shows, if I'm being honest, other than Jessica Jones. But Jessica Jones kind of lost me in the second season, I think.
But that
Okay,
season one was so good.
yeah, of Jessica Jones. Oh my god, I was riveted,
So good. I love
riveted.
Kristen Ritter though. I'm such a big Kristen Ritter fan. Like Don't Trust the Bitch in Apartment 23 is like
Never
an
watched it.
underrated favorite
Oh
television
my god,
show.
I'm an idiot. It's not the hand; it's the hood.
Oh, who's the Hood?
He has like he literally is in a hood, and he has
Well,
like these
yeah,
like magical pistols. But he's very like he's a mystic, like villain of the streets, like Daredevil type. I can't remember what comic book he was
sure,
introduced
sure,
to,
sure,
but
sure.
it's the hood, and it's Anthony Ramos who's playing him. Yes,
Anthony Ramos is so cute. Oh my god, there's like pictures of him already.
yeah, he was in the trailer.
Was he really? Shit, I must need to watch the trailer closer again. Sick. Okay, I'm into it. Um, all right. The other, general banter topic before we get in is it's election day on Tuesday. How are we feeling?
Always nervous because I feel like that's
Baseline.
where yeah, at the end of the day, because too much shouldn't have to be writing on every election, but that's
Right.
part of the problem with our system that like it
Agreed.
feels like, oh, can't wait for my rights to be on for voting every 4 years.
Right.
But hopefully, like, you know, the Seltzer poll that just came out on Saturday night, where with, you know, Kamala up in Iowa. So here's,
Mhm.
you know, and this is why Caitlin Clark liking Taylor Swift's tweets important, you know, like that's ultimately the no.
I mean, I feel like I also saw something that was still saying they're basically neck and neck, which is not to be surprising. Like, you know,
Exactly. Like,
that's
but that's just it,
how
is it
elections
shouldn't be
work.
this close. Like if you watch
Right.
anything, it's so ridiculous that these two people
Mhm.
are up. But you know, I'm really hoping that everything. I'm just nervous because whatever the results are, there's going to be, you know, allegations of tampering. Like, and you just know
Yeah.
that it's going to happen, and that
And
I
they're
just
fully.
worry about that.
Didn't a ballot box just get blown up?
It got burned, yeah, in
Like,
Michigan or Wisconsin. I can't even remember.
like, come on. Like, it's the shenanigans are already, they're shenanigans again. And not to make
Mhm.
light of, like, you know, election tampering or whatever, but our system is kind of a joke. So it's hard to be like, oh, look at that. You know, how weird that a sitting president tried to, you know, defund the post office prior to election season to get rid of by mail voting. But anyways, um, yeah, Oopsie, how are you feeling?
Well, I guess the same. Panicked, but
Yeah,
I think I'm more hopeful that shit will play out right, and
yeah,
I'm just hope I'm not surprised. But I mean, like Shauna said, with that poll coming out, and that one's like pretty raved about how accurate it is or how on point it usually is. And there was something about like there's usually like a margin of error of like usually the candidate is 7 points or more ahead of what it actually is, but it's usually like the closest to the mark, which is why it's like such a huge deal that they're reported that she's ahead in Iowa. So I'm just hopeful that it'll
yeah.
be.
You're an Aquarius. Of course, you're hopeful.
I try not to think too much because then it's like, why stress myself
It's
out?
overwhelming.
It is.
Yeah, that's
I'll
kind of
do
how I feel.
it day at a time.
Yeah. Um, I heard something, or I saw something online that said like it's easier to try to hold a president accountable than, you know, a fucking fascist. And that's kind of where my head is at, is like I'm not, again, I'm just, I wish I could be excited about the prospect of voting for a black woman who is, or the idea, it's not a prospect, that I get to vote for a black woman who is, again, just otherworldly qualified in terms of experience and expertise. And the biggest push to the polls is like to keep the fascist out. And that also fucking sucks because
Mhm.
that's like, you can't let it steal the enormity of that. But I do I do care that I get to vote for a black woman.
Yeah.
And, you know, all of the federal funding of a genocide and the happenings around the rest of the world included, and also notwithstanding, like, it is that where I am settling on my decision to vote is it's easier to try to hold a president accountable than a fascist. So
The
that's what's motivating me.
Every president is going to make decisions that a normal person would be morally opposed to. Every
Right.
single president in a national war scale at the end of the
Right.
day. Like, and I feel like the United States in particular is, look, I'm not telling probably anyone who listens to this anything they don't know about the United States history of aiding, abetting atrocities across the globe. And that's true
Right.
whether a Republican or Democrat is in charge.
Right.
However, and
Right.
with that being said, and so that, but that's why, like, trying, as much as like this, you know, the atrocities that are happening in this current moment are obviously very present as they should be on all of our minds. I think with that being said, there is still a difference between the two, both in terms of, like you said, the ability to move, but also on so many other issues, be
Right.
it, you know, abortion, the Supreme Court, LGBTQ rights and what that will mean at a federal level in terms of funding. Like all of
Right.
those things are just as real and just as impactful in many ways. And at least you can make a tangible difference that way, even if
Right.
everything else is the same. And that's why I think I
So
urge to vote.
yes. By the time this episode comes out, election day will have hopefully passed. Sean and I were texting trying to figure out if we should put it out, like the day, like hold it until the day after, to see if it can bring a little levity if things are bad. But I'm going to see if I can try to get it out tomorrow so that it's its own separate thing. And, I'd rather
Something to watch
not.
while you're instead
Exactly.
of
I'd
doom
rather
scrolling.
not have to, I want to be able to do whatever I want on election day after I vote and like take care of myself how I want to. And I feel like I'm going to have to do a lot. Again, regardless of what happens, I just got like a gurgle in my stomach thinking about like, oh God, I'm going to have to like talk to people about this at work and I'm going to have to hold space. I'm sure whichever way it goes, it's just going to be a lot. So we're going to hold each other up and we're going to keep watching good programming such as Agatha All Along. This has been your civics lesson. We're going to jump into this 2-episode finale. I mean, we're going to break it down as we go, but is there anything, from either of you that you're just like, I just really have to say I'm so happy. I don't think I need to wait until the end or till a specific moment, but like, what a hard pivot from the last topic. This show has brought me so much joy. I'm so sad that it's over, but like, God damn it, if they didn't really, the girls got to eat. They got to eat. We got to eat. What do you all think? Just off rip.
I think you're right. I think it was a zeitgeist for queer people everywhere to be able to talk about
Yes.
and discuss. But
Yes.
especially for, our little friend group and being able to go over what we think, at the
Yeah.
end of the day, my 7-year-old has had down, down, down the road, down the witch's road stuck in his head too, because I've been singing it. And so have my partners.
Yes.
And so then he'll just be like, he literally said, why is this in my head now? Because it's
Yeah.
such a catchy moment, and it's been so great to get to share with both, with you two but also with you all on this podcast. I think that's been a really
Yeah.
fun thing to get to discuss, and I really have enjoyed so many moments, and it's been it really spoke like we were the audience, and I love that it really felt made for us in so many ways.
Agreed. Uxie, how are you feeling?
Yeah, like it was a show for the gays, theys, and all the witches out there. Like it was
Yeah.
fantastic, and the fact that it like nothing stood in its way, like all the incel bros, like there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing they probably could have done to like get this off track in terms of like good viewership or
Mm-hmm.
ratings or even a cult following almost. Like this, like it grew such a, like I saw people like online, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, like friends that I'd never even thought would be into the
Mm-hmm.
show. Like a friend from California of mine texted me about it, and I was like, hold up, you don't like anything Marvel. Like, how are you watching this? And it's just all because
Right.
of Mother Han. She's like, I love Catherine Han. I will eat anything she serves. And it
Yeah.
served quite the buffet.
Yeah, huge fan of Catherine Hahn, like just in general. I don't think again, um it feels very cyclical to come back to raving about how incredible she is, but now we have so much more perspective. Like what a wonderful performance. I have also really loved the press tour of it. Like, it's a hard contrast. Obviously, the exact other side of the spectrum is like, Dakota Johnson doing Madam Web, but like you can't swipe through any app right now and not see an ad, at least in my world. Obviously my algorithm is quite tailored, but you know people are very happy with her performance. Like the conversation about her relationship with Rio, which we get more about in these episodes, like, I don't, the part of what I think a lot of us hold so fondly about WandaVision is, especially for the gays, theys, and femmes, We love seeing a complicated bad bitch on television, and Wanda Maximoff is nothing but. And so WandaVision was so fun, but it was like such a shitty fucking time. Like, it was the depths of lockdown, and it was like the only
Huh.
thing that was like, past the time by. It felt like weeks between each episode because we were
Uh,
so like connected to it. And our circle, or whatever it was called, our bubble, was so small at that point. It was just like, this is all we have to talk about because the rest of the world is on fire. And maybe it is a little eerie that the world is still on fire. But this made it made time pass in a way that I was like, it's Wednesday, I can't wait to watch television and talk to my friends about how much shit we're getting, like, as fans. Like, not shit in a bad way, but just like, this was so like fan service, just like ladled on top, in terms of even bringing it all the way to the ending of like us seeing a high camp like Catherine Hahn as a ghost Agatha Harkness. Like, they did it. They did all of it. They did all the things that we wanted, or most of the things that we wanted. And let's talk about it. Shauna, do you want to talk us through episode 8?
Yeah, so episode 8 opens with a flashback as Alice's spirit awakens to discover her newly dead body, as Rio, now in her death visage, is waiting to lead
Yes.
her towards the afterlife. And so I really loved getting to start off seeing what happens because, we saw the little snippet of Lilia getting to see death and getting to
Right.
see Rio. And so now you get to see what happens to Alice. And I loved like the really sweet moment where they're like, well, you died protecting someone. You're a protection witch. Like, it
Yes.
really helped kind of
Right.
give her, I think, that closure to move forward, which she probably doesn't have to give to everybody, but obviously gave to her at least brief compatriot in Alice.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think you just said something that reminded me that clicked when we were watching this episode, which was that like Lilia saw death in her disorganized timeline. Like, I didn't really put together that she saw Rio as death before she actually died, which was another instance of her life happening out of order, because
Mhm.
it's not like Rio would just appear to her. She didn't die when she fell. Like, she just, unless that's what they were saying. But anyways, yeah, and we got the not full Rio death costume that we see at the end of this episode. We got her a little more subdued, a little wayfarer into the afterlife, not full blown comic villain, which was nice.
But I also like that there was that kind of comic villain outfit that she can
Yes.
really like you could see where her comic, where they have a little bit more budget and a little more where it will go to the next level. Though, can we talk
Yeah.
about the physical effect makeup of her skull face and
Oh my
how it was
god.
actually done with physical makeup in a way that I was not expecting in Marvel using everything CGI, because everything just looks so good in this show for it
So
existing,
good.
and it was lauded universally as being like, "Oh my gosh, this was one of the cheapest Marvel shows." And I'm like, no wonder they didn't have 50 supercomputers putting shit together, and
Right.
instead we're
Yeah,
having
everything was
actual
super practical.
experts. Yeah,
Yeah.
because that it's not like we don't have the technology in a physical way to make that too. And I love that they embrace that and we're able to save money for it. So yeah, so all right, moving on. So then you get Rio informs Agatha that she's there for Billy, who she views as this abomination for, adding a life that shouldn't have been to the world. And I'm like, I guess that makes sense that she's very much like everything in order, this
Yes.
green witch that there's an order to nature, and nature doesn't like it when you skip steps and go out of line, and I
Right.
think it's interesting that their group in many ways has multiple people out of that natural order, as you have Lilia, who
Sure.
sees time in different ways and has kind of been able to be alive for a very long time. Same with an Agatha, who's also like actually, and all of it, like Jen Kale is
Yeah.
also a very old lady.
She is, yeah.
Yeah,
I
so they've all
I
kind of
think
cheated death in a way.
yeah, and I mean Alice too. She it
Yeah.
was fucking cursed. Like she was surrounded by death all the time. That is a good point. All
Yeah,
of
and
them were
she should have died a while ago, but because of the protection spell in her. Yeah, I hadn't thought of
right.
that connection between all of them and death
Damn.
and their avoidance until they met on the road.
Totally.
So yeah, and so now you get Billy and Jen rejoin Agatha at the end of the road, discovering that it just goes in a circle as they come upon their shoes right where they left, and they're all left to think, what the heck? And so I think it's
Wait,
really, yeah.
sorry. The one thing that I wanted to make sure that we also saw, like, we got a little bit more connection between Rio and Agatha too, where, you know, we get they really like their chemistry between them as actors gives such remarkable X's. Like the way that the dynamic between them goes back and forth between like genuine hatred and then like softness, like is only possible with an X. And there's a moment when she
Mm,
says like, why do you let them believe those terrible things about you? Which then tells us that Nikki, she did not tell her son. I mean, we find out for real in the next episode, but what Rio is referencing is that she did not actually give her son up for the Darkhold, which leaves a giant question mark as to where she did get the Darkhold from. But she says, because the truth is too awful. And what we learn in the next episode is that the baby was going to die during childbirth. Seemingly, that's what I took that as. Is
mhm.
that
Yeah, no, I think that was my takeaway as well, was that it was going to be a like a stillbirth of some sort, and that she could sense it because she could probably feel death near.
right? Right. And again, getting ahead of ourselves, but like now, I can't wait to go back and rewatch the entire show through knowing what we know now. But um, the uh, the other thing that she says is something about wasting the road's time. But when Rio leaves that exchange between the two of them, where Agatha promises Rio to bring Billy, Rio walks up to the what is a backdrop, but like she uses her knife to cut through the the backdrop of the road, and it looks like she's tearing a hole in reality, and it's just so sickening.
She also, in that exchange, like right before she does that, she almost gives it away that the road isn't real. So like in
Mm-hmm.
that same like exchange where Agatha's like, it's a waste of the road's time, and then she says a
Mm-hmm.
line about like you're on the road that isn't even, and then like Agatha cuts her off as she's like about to say isn't even real,
Yes.
and it's just like
Yes.
they've hinted at this shit since like day one. Like,
Oh,
like
they've
there's
been
been like
so
hints, right? Like
all of
it's
Agatha's little looks like
yeah.
Yes.
And then she goes
Well,
and cuts into this like fake TV screen as she's like about to say it's like it's not even real. Look.
the it's funny. I hadn't even picked up on that. I took it as like you're walking on this road with a son, the son of a woman, and he's not even yours. Like I took it as she was going to say like that's not your fucking son. Like I know you're projecting onto him because again, I'm your ex. I know that you are
hmm
also projecting this relationship onto this kid. Like you're taking this fantastical road trip with another son. Like he's not your son. I
just
definitely
like you
didn't
took
take
a
it
trip
as
on the road, like in finding out, again to the next episode that it was written with like her and her son singing the song on the road. I think it's really
yes,
that she then did get to walk this journey
yes.
again
Okay,
with
let's
a surrogate. Yeah.
yes, let's keep it pumping.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, keep us going.
So Billy puts his shoes back on, and another comment about like, "Oh, do you expect them to be bronzed?" Which I did love that, like,
Yeah,
flash forward, call ahead. And so they're now in the basement, but it's this weird futuristic, like almost, felt very medical with like, and then plus
yeah,
the grow lights as
yeah,
you then get the big reveal that it was Agatha who was paid to bind Jen all those years ago. And realizing that, she breaks the power, and it was such a great scene as she then regains all of her strength and vanquishes Agatha and then gets to leave.
Like, how... So in an earlier episode, I definitely said that like I was not a huge fan of Sashir Zameda's acting. I was having a little bit of a hard time adjusting to her beyond just how like I think she's a great comic actress. That unbinding spell, baby. I mean, obviously, like we have to acknowledge the dynamic that was definitely supposed to be like commentary on white feminism because, Agatha took this money from men to harm another woman, not knowing that, or not caring that she was harming another woman. And in this instance, it was a Black woman. So adding that additional layer of how that still very much so exists in spaces for women, like, the exclusion of Black women, the harm that happens to Black women and femmes. But there was like, it was really powerful to watch Sashir reclaim that, like you said, like reclaim her power back and undo the binding spell. And then she just sheds like one single tear and disappears from the road. And it's like, how fucking beautiful.
It's incredible writing.
It was incredible writing, acting, directing, like how much she repeats it. And like Agatha is clearly like uncomfortable, like, yeah, right, bitch, that's not how it works. Like, you're not going to do it. But as we are reminded, like, Sashir's magic is like rooted in, her African ancestry. She's an 11th generation root worker. Bitch, she's doing magic that you don't know, you don't even have access to. Like, she is doing magic that you think is not real, and then realizes, again, similar to what we see in the episode, that like a lot of the magic that exists is based on the person's connection to it. Like, sometimes motherfuckers make whole reality constructs with their connection to magic that should not exist. But yeah, that was just so beautiful. It was so beautiful. Great work. I also saw a clip that was like, isn't it wild to think that Sashir Zameda spent all this time with Catherine Hahn and then came out as a late in life lesbian? Like, yeah, it checks out.
Yes.
How would you want to fuck Catherine Hahn and with all that fucking Dom mommy energy? Damn. She made Death her bottom. Death is a bottom. A whiny, sissy bottom.
Gimme.
Gimme. Why don't you love me? Okay. Sorry, we love you, bottoms.
No, but I also had kind of the same feelings towards Shasir's acting from like beginning to end. And I think that was actually intentional. Like, I think it was, you were supposed to not like this very selfish, guarded woman that was just very much into herself, because that's all she's been able to focus on for a while, is like, how do I unbind myself? How do I, make something out of myself? And then you do see that transformation from like the first episode where she's climbing in the oven and she pushes Lilia out of the way to get into this oven, to the ending where she's like, I'm not going before you. Like, you go, like, she clear, like that whole episode of her in the tunnels with Lilia made me love her so much more. And then you get to the like next episode and you're like, baby girl, absolutely, yes, fly away, birdie, fly away.
Yes, especially the dynamic between her and Lilia too, because I think the commentary of the show that exists, that has been said and is very clearly in the subtext, but like, Lilia says to Jen when they're in the tunnel, like, I hope you'll go with me because you are my sister in the craft. And what Lilia says when she's doing her tarot reading, like, I was missing you all. I was missing my coven. And it is just, specifically about the power of sisterhood, but also about the power of community, like what we are capable of doing when we work together. And especially from like a small scale, like these women's lives were changed. And improved by the decision to do something together. And even if it was all selfish to begin with, like, that also kind of calls into question, like, is it really fucking selfish to just want to find your strength again, or your connection to, you know, your divine right? Like, is it selfish to be like, I want my shit back, like, it's been long enough?
Right.
And yeah, I think we're supposed to read power as, you know, something that is abused, but I think that's more about commentary on how we individually think about power than who these women are. Like, you know, we meet them at such a weird point in their lives. Just, God, it's always that deep, and it's never that deep. Thank you, Jack Schaefer, for this incredible commentary. And like, I know obviously it's like so many people involved, but like, Jack Schaefer specifically, what a she is in charge of all. She's in charge of the division of magic at Marvel Studios. Make her the
They
president.
really should give her absolutely more, like, let her keep doing this because she's clearly
Mhm.
making a successful product. But in
Yeah.
that vein, something I also thought of during that, so Billy kind of takes it very personally. He's like, "Oh my gosh!" When you find out the reveal that he made the road, he's like, "Oh my gosh, I killed
Hmm.
these women." And Agatha's, well, like, well, not really. Like, I mean, I killed Alice, and
Right.
like she. But I think there's something to that. The road didn't give Jen back her powers. She
Yes,
gave
she
herself
took
back
a.
her powers. The road
Yes.
shot her out then thereafter, and she could leave, but she gave herself the powers just as she, it wasn't like the road magically gifted them to her.
Right.
And I think
Right.
so there wasn't really a prize other than the determination that she found in herself, and
Totally.
that the road gave her that indirect, like, but not directly, indirectly.
Hmm.
I
Well,
think
kind
that's
of,
a really
because like
interesting aspect.
earlier when Jen's talking about how she was bound and she's like, I still don't even know how he did it without any magic.
Mhm.
Agatha wasn't even around for that. She was talking to Teen at that moment when she like made that commentary.
Mm.
And so that's why it's
Right.
like a full circle moment when they get to the end and she's like, wait a minute, you're the one that bound me, after she like puts her face to face and then she takes her power back and like
Hmm.
goes away.
Totally. And I think also is, commentary on the realization of women with more privilege about how they do harm. Like, obviously, Catherine Hahn or I'm sorry, obviously, Agatha Harkness is a terrible example because she is evil and she knowingly harmed people. But, she said, like, it was either bind or burn. Like, I was saving my own life. I did what I had to do. And it's like, well, yeah, girl, because you had the option to save your own life. Like, she had no option. And it just, I think that particular moment of growth is cool and important.
Definitely. So yeah, so that, gosh, such a good moment. And so then you're left with just Billy and Agatha, and Billy, in the same way, also kind of helps himself and finds a body for his brother, realizes that he's out there in the ether, and gives life.
Yes.
And so now you know that Tommy's out there somewhere, in
Hmm.
but that's for
Uxie
another
as our
episode because
resident,
yeah.
yeah, as our resident Wiccan enthusiast. How are you feeling? I really thought that we were gonna get a glimpse of Tommy, because the moment, first of all, what a cool scene, but like, you know, she's guiding him, bringing his dead brother back from the grave to find a body, because that's the level of power he has. But before I want to come back to that, but what are your thoughts on Tom, knowing that Tommy is coming?
It makes me very excited because it could lead to one of my favorite storylines. I mean, they're two of my favorite characters.
Hmm.
And like, am I to understand this whole time that Billy just has had Tommy like in his like within himself the whole time up until he goes and releases him, because that part did confuse me.
Well,
Trying to figure
I
out,
didn't
it's like,
think it
so
was
you're just
necessarily in
harboring
him
like
as much as just kind of
him?
like in a like, you know,
He exists.
the energy had to go somewhere, and it's in like a
Right.
magical storage containment, like in,
It's in the cloud. He's in the cloud
yeah, yeah, it's in the cloud. Exactly, though.
because he was just a bunch of pixels.
Valid. I do. I mean, I'm not mad they didn't show him, because then it's like people would be on the lookout for this actor. What if he's recast? Kind of how like Cassie
Right.
Lang got
Right.
recast, like when she
Right.
was like an integral part. And also, it leaves the person, it leaves that character in this mysterium where like you look for him in little shows, because like we know Vision Quest is coming. We don't know if he's going to be in that one. Are Agatha and Billy going to get their own spin-off show, and that's how we meet him? Like, it just creates so much work for theory crafting and figuring out where we're going to see Tommy next, now that we know he for sure is out there. I'm also kind of curious, does that mean this is not the last of Rio that we've seen, considering that she was after Billy because of this like uh thing that he did that she doesn't agree with? Is she going to come back again when
Right.
he
And
does?
then he did it again.
Yeah, like the first
He's
thing.
like, "Oh, you hated it the first time, bitch. Just wait. There's more. I got another one for this dead body count you're keeping."
Right.
Yeah, I had my hands on Uxi's shoulder while we were watching it, like death gripping, because I thought for one fucking second we would get like his face kind of bursting through the water, coming back to life or whatever. But I'm glad that they, didn't. I thought it was really interesting that they made it very clear, like, he's not taking over another person's life, like Billy Kaplan. Like, this kid had no one. Like, he says, it's a prank. These kids are pranking him. It's going wrong. He has no one. He has no parents. Like, no one is looking out for him. So, this isn't, it will make introducing that character and not having to explain all of that stuff even easier. But the thing that I was going to get at is Agatha, sees Jen disappear, and then she has this moment where nothing is said, but like, again, knowing what we know, she just says, "Fuck it, I bet he can do this." And so she says, "I'm going to help you find your brother." Like, it had nothing to do with Agatha. She was not in the slightest way. Like, her putting her hands on that was all for fucking show. Like, she knew he needed someone to guide him through it, which is kind of a cool, again, preview into what we know will be a mentorship relationship. But yeah, I thought that was really, really interesting. I also thought it was interesting that the grow lights were definitely ticking way slower than any other counter, or way faster the more emotionally upset he got. Like, really, like, you're getting to the end. Like, come on, we got to hurry this shit up. And then what? How do we finish out, Shauna?
And so then, now that Billy vanishes after finding his brother, and you're left with just Agatha, who goes into the locket and, touches the hair of Nikki and finds a seed. And suddenly then there is now some soil on the ground. And so using her tear, she gives it water, plants the soil, and it sprouts, and she gets the heck out of that basement. And she survives
The Witch's Road.
the Riches Road, only to then find a cackling Rio on the roof, and pure like, I love the like, oh, were you expecting a finish line? Like, yep,
Right.
you're here, and now we get to do this. Like, where's, you promised me this kid. Where is he?
Yeah. The other thing that I think was really beautiful, we get a moment of closure for Agatha, that is, ripped open again. But Billy, when Billy is trying to bring Tommy back, he's saying, like, "Am I killing this kid to bring my brother back?" And she says no, and like the ground cracks, and that's how the soil gets there or whatever, which I thought was really cool. But
I didn't realize that detail.
Yeah, he's like so much power is coming off of him that the ground cracks, and that's how the soil
Huh.
appears.
No.
Yeah, but she says like no in response to his question about like killing the kid. She said sometimes boys just die, and
Ugh.
that's again the first sort of like reminder that like no, she didn't sacrifice her fucking son for the Darkhold. She just murdered people.
A
And then
lot
we
of
get
people.
a lot of people as we come to find out, but we do get this badass fight with the ultimate Wiccan reveal. Uxie, please, your first response. Like,
I mean, I could have died that day and been fine.
The
That was my first thought in the first like 5 seconds, and then my follow-up thought was, wait, he's kind of goofy, but it was still
it was kind of goofy.
it was a little bit goofy, but in every way I would look past the goofiness because I was just
Totally.
like, this is incredible. Because then you also like you watch the behind the scenes of like the
Yes.
detail in his costume about how like the outside is more formatted to Scarlet Witch's costume from like Multiverse of Madness, and the inside of his cape is like the pattern of Vision's cape, so his parents are with him the whole time. Like it's just a really like every detail of the show has just been so spot on in terms of like references or homages to certain things, and like his costume just did not disappoint.
Yeah, and also so crafted with so much love. Like,
and
whose idea was that? What creative genius was like, let's make the outside of his coat his mom and the inside of his coat his dad? Like, what? Who thinks that?
Right.
Geniuses.
I
you got
did
up
think
and
that
screamed. When it happened, you stood and screamed, Ryan,
I did.
and that was
I
a moment.
screamed.
I had
You
to like
stood
say,
up and exclaimed loudly, and it was wonderful. And it was like,
Yeah.
like I cannot help but think of that moment when I rewatched it. I was like, oh, this was it.
Yeah. It was I mean, it was he comes down, you know, he telekinetically throws Rio away and then comes floating down in his full fucking Wiccan faggotry with his, you know, stupid little blue wiggly woos and
That's
his,
good.
you know, his PJs and his hood and like it's the costume is just campy. Like
And it's
Wiccan's
what he wore as a
costume
child. Like,
yeah, exactly. Wiccan's costume is you can't adapt that in a way. I mean, it looks cool, but like it's campy. Like he looks like a little gay boy superhero, and you can't
um,
have capes without it being silly. Capes are just fucking silly in
my
general.
capes.
Like it just come on, girl. But yeah, that was such a fucking great reveal. Such a great. I mean,
mhm.
I don't think it counts as a reveal. Costume reveal.
Yeah.
At
And
one point,
so,
then, yeah, during the battle, she throws, Rio throws Agatha, or Rio throws, so Wiccan gives all his power to, Agatha, and, she, like, respects that and doesn't kill him, which is lovely. But Rio throws Billy into a greenhouse, and you hear in the background Agatha or Rio says, "Power looks good on you," because now Agatha and Rio are fighting, and Rio says, "Power looks good on you," and Agatha screams, "Everything looks good on me."
it's so good.
So
But
good.
also, she definitely outright killed Alice, and that was something that we'd kind of talked about. Like, wait,
Yeah.
was she in control? Was she not? And she was, and she did.
Yeah, because
She
even
Mhm.
in like, the next
absolutely,
episode, it shows that she intentionally went out. It wasn't just like, oh, I
She was
accidentally
gonna kill him.
keep killing. Yeah, it
yeah, that
was.
was her plan.
Mhm.
She was gonna kill all them hoes.
I did feel like
Uh,
this scene or this whole interaction did rob us of a great fight, though. Like that's one critique I think
mm,
I will have of this episode is that we didn't get and again, broken record, keeping the comparison to WandaVision, but like the fight between Wanda and Agatha was certainly way more climactic than the fight
Mhm.
between Agatha and Rio. Like it was
well,
just
I
there
think
was
it
just
was
no.
that was a superhero show, and I think you got a
Right.
superhero fight for it in a way that this
Totally.
didn't really ever, even though it's in the Marvel universe, it didn't feel like a superhero show. So I'm not surprised that we didn't get this big climatic like final battle because it really wasn't. It was really much more about the journey than any one moment. And so like I think that's a fair criticism, but I'm also not surprised because I wasn't really looking for that personally, at least. Though it would have been cool.
And as we're talking about that, I'm reminded of how we talked about the fight scene between the two of them at the beginning of the series, where it's very
Mm.
like down and dirty, sort of like grappling, hitting each other type shit. And I think that also is the same vein of like these are not these are not people who fight like that, like even we see Wanda technically get like a moment of training when she's announced as like a formal part of the Avengers at the end of whichever one, Civil War. No,
Age of Ultron.
not Civil War. Age of Ultron, yeah. And so we see her in the Avengers facility, so we have to assume she's getting combat training. But like she was a fucking Avenger. She fought a bitch like the Avengers. And so I think it was also kind of an interesting like, no, Agatha and Rio would not be in this like close quarter combat type shit. They're just like trying to haul off and take each other down, which I think is not as like action wise, it doesn't pay off in the same way. But I think I'm sort of along the same lines where it's like it's totally a valid criticism, and I'm also glad that it was a little more grounded in how they actually fought. But I think it's totally a fair criticism because that's what we tuned in for.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess it does play into the whole like this was a very cheaply
Yeah,
conducted or produced show. So like, 'cause
right,
I mean, that whole scene with like Billy falling through the greenhouse, getting up super slowly, peering through like the glass, making his way out of this like like it was definitely planted there to like cut out what could have been
right,
used to like add more like fighting or like shooting of wiggly woos or whatever you want to do it, because it's just like
right,
you just hear
right,
the banter but you don't see anything, and it's like, okay, I did not need to see this little boy crawl out of this greenhouse. Like you could have added
right.
just a little bit more and that probably would have satisfied me.
Totally, totally. Great point. Great
Yes,
point. That was definitely some filler footage
like
of
absolute filler footage.
we did not need to see him get up. Like we
Mhm.
know.
Yeah, of
Like
course
he
he's
could have
bleeding. He's like 16 years old and was hauled through a
right,
glass. Like, of course, like he's
right.
gonna be like,
He just
Right.
got that super suit.
right.
And things we did need to see though, the next scene, because
Oh,
you then get a final, one last Agatha double crossing as she
yes.
is just ready to sell Billy out when he agrees to go with her. And she immediately just flips the script and is like, oh, that's a good point. You probably should go. Until the emotional tenor of the moment, Billy reminds her that of her son and like, is this what really happened? Did you sell him out? And she's like,
Right.
well, no, I did what I could to protect him. And
Yeah.
gives in and sees the moments that she had and embraces death, embraces Rio, and we finally get our lesbian MCU kiss, and I'm so happy for it. That was my big prediction. It was like it was going to be gay, and it was, and I'm very here for it. And speaking of like valid criticisms, there were a lot of people that wish we got more backstory on Rio and
Totally.
on Agatha, but at the end of the day, they still paid off with a moment that was befitting. It gave her a hero's death in many ways, or at least a death that was one that was, of merit, and so
Yes.
ended up satisfying her end of the bargain. And actually, she says that she doesn't want to see death when she dies, and she did close her
Right.
eyes.
Yep. Oh, great point. Great point. And I think I saw Jack Schaefer talking about that, and she said that she did have some regrets. Like that was kind of the end of the quote, but she's like, that story does exist. Like they had to build the story between them because where the next episode picks up, which we'll get to in a few minutes, but like when the next episode picks up, we see Agatha by herself. and we get to see Rio, a couple of times, but like they already know each other. There's a whole backstory, and that story exists, and perhaps we'll get the chance for it to be told. But like, I think, again, valid criticism, but not what the show was building towards. Like,
Yeah.
Agatha is not a character that's going to have a majorly substantial presence, I have to imagine. Like, I'm sure she'll still be around,
And
especially
that's
knowing what
why
we know.
ultimately she becomes
We
Ghost
don't
Agatha, and I think that's like
exactly.
where, like, if you were expecting her to be this major player, that's not really where her story is, but she's still
Right,
present and is able to then assist Billy and be a mentor and all of that fun stuff.
right, right.
As
Which is what we
uh,
get at the end after Agatha turns into a bunch of mushrooms, which was really gross. But it was beautiful, and it did kind of the panning of the footage, like it starts at her feet and goes up to her head as she slowly, like, rapidly decays. It's shot very much so like the the witch the witch's feet, the Wicked Witch of the West, her
mm,
feet like rolling back up onto the
mm,
house after she dies when the house falls. That's what it reminded me of, at least.
nice.
Yeah.
Well, and speaking of the Wicked Witch and things that remind one of things, we then
Yes.
go to the room, in Billy's room, where he comes to a realization. And this is something that we'd kind of had seen moments of, but really hadn't put two and two together. He made it all up.
He
The
made it
road
all up.
was his own fabrication, as everything in his room were things that were present in the road, as he had conjured this into being, this, and made it come to life. And it was still such a wonderful thing, as all of these
Yes.
elements in his room were represented, except for one. He has a
Which
giant
was
Trans Lives Matter flag, but I sure saw a lot of cis people and not a lot of trans people on that
it's
road. All
true.
I'm
It's
saying is, if he
true.
really wanted his room represented, at least one transsexual should have been involved. That's all I'm
Right. Yes,
saying.
transsexual. Who knows? Maybe
Maybe that's
maybe
like a hidden backstory that we're going to find out, and
yeah.
I look forward to
Ew,
that. But that's all
gross.
I'm saying. Like,
Gross in the sense of retconning them later, like, however many years, in 20 years, they're going to be like, Alice Wu Gulliver was a non-binary trans femme. Like, shut up.
absolutely, that's going to be. I think that's going to be the case. Yeah,
Yes.
but yeah. So
And we,
oh, what a great reveal! Because we'd been really on the like, hey, he's the one who gets the clue every time. It
yes,
really feels like he's got some aspect of control going on here that either he
yes,
realizes it or doesn't. We had talked about that in previous episodes, and I think we were credit to us for kind of seeing the breadcrumbs they'd been leaving us in that regard.
totally. And to the other nerds who shared it on their, like, shout again, kind of what Uxie was referencing earlier. Like, it was so fun to theory craft and to see other people's stuff and to like hear what other people thought and like to be like, no, that's wrong. That's wrong. To like sit and listen to other people's theories and be like, no, you're way off. Like, you're way, way off, but cute that you thought so. Um, but yeah, shout out to the other nerds who picked up on the stuff that we didn't, because, there was a lot to connect and picture and whatever. And again, I hope more people understand why consuming content like this is fun for the sake of like being able to like reference and think back. Like, yeah, it's a lot of work to keep up on the content, but like it's so fucking fun when it pays off like that. Like that was self-referential to mostly itself, but then all of the clues that we start to put together, like the entire end of the credits. I noticed in the credits they have a map of Westview and they have a pentagram inside of a hexagon. And someone pointed out that, a pentagram is five sides because Billy could control, or it's 5 points. Billy could control all five senses, but he couldn't control their minds. And that's why uh, Scarlet Witch's spell was a hexagon, because it was all five senses, like what they could see, hear, feel, taste, blah, 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 blah. And also she had control over their minds. That's wild, but it also, again, is like very, okay, cool. Why else would they show this pentagram inside of a hexagon over the town that Wanda had a spell over? Like, what it's just so fun, and I'm so glad we got to do that again.
Agreed.
Any other closing thoughts for episode 8?
Oh my god, the walkout where he walks out of her house and he puts her hood up. Or he puts his hood up
Yes.
exactly like Wanda did when she leaves Westview. And then he gets in
Yes.
his little car and
His Subaru.
His little fucking
instead of flying
Subaru.
away. It's like, oh, yeah, get back in your Subaru and go home.
Yes. Get back in the Subaru. Did you see
That's
that
on My
Instagram
Chemical
exchange?
Romance. Wait, which Instagram exchange?
Subaru's Instagram account commented on something and said, like, we saw what kind of car he drives. And Joe Locke responded to it and said something like, well, when you need something reliable. And, like, it was just, that's what every lesbian, why did you buy your Subaru, Shauna and family?
It's very reliable.
It's gay
And
culture
it's
to own a
stereotype. Look,
Subaru.
and I do love the story of why Subarus are gay culture. That it
Wait,
was.
what is it?
Oh, so we were like lesbians were explicitly targeted as the audience because they saw they're like, oh, this is like a market of people that were not appealed to at all, and so they saw this like market gap, and so then they started like putting ads in more lesbian places and kind of like soft depicting, and so like a lot of like women hiking together kind of like ads, and like so it was, and that's how it kind of became this like de facto, it was a very intentional choice on Subaru to market themselves to queer women. And so I thought that
Love
was such an
that.
interesting, like,
Go Subaru. So it
marketing
was literally
strategy back.
just,
Yeah.
yeah, it was just a
They were like,
marketing
this is,
strategy that worked.
yeah. Like, I thought that was kind of a cool, like, this, like, a neat, like, oh, hey, there's money to be had here that nobody's cashing in on. Why not us?
Right. Right. These women love to use these bike racks, whether if it's for bikes on a trail or all of your belongings after a second date.
Yeah.
Okay, Uxie, take us into episode 9.
So episode 9, as Billy is coming to the realization that he made the road and then hears Agatha's boo, we then cut to 1750 where Agatha is giving birth to Nikki. And as she's doing so, she's looking very alarmed, kind of looking all over the woods as she's kind of picking up that's like something's wrong. And that's when we see Death. She pleads with her, please don't take him. And Rio ends up giving her 6 years of extra time and essentially giving her special treatment by giving her more time with her son, which I
So
thought was
some
kind of just like
yeah,
you were
go.
saying earlier that it was like alluding that it was supposed to be like a stillborn or it wasn't going to make it. And so then Rio granting her that life was just kind of like the little extra gift that she could give her. And then when she calls her my love too, like I feel going back to the whole getting more time and figuring or seeing how Rio and Agatha first met. Because I mean, the fact that we just get the whole alluding to them being in a relationship, her calling her my love, I would have loved to have seen how they initially met, other than Jen's comment of them meeting over corpses.
Right, exactly. One of the other things that I thought was really interesting was when Agatha bites down on the lemon to suppress her screams in childbirth. I was like, wow. I thought the depiction of childbirth that she was like was really interesting. Again, like thinking about how women have or people have traditionally given birth over the centuries, and like she was just walking it out. She the best she could do was just walk that bitch into labor and fucking put her face on a lemon to hold her screams back. uh it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So then from here, we end up seeing Agatha spending the next 6 years raising her son, running a con to kill witches, manipulating them for power, which then Nikki eventually ends up growing to oppose it all and doesn't like it anymore. But with them creating this con, moving from village to village, they create this song, a children's song together, which we end up finding out is the Witch's Road song. And they take this as they go from village to village. And during one of their last stops, Nikki eventually grows sick and death takes them, devastating Agatha.
One thing that I definitely did not clock until someone pointed it out on the internet is like Nikki does look a lot like Rio, and like, you know, Rio is the father of her child. Not literally, but like, you know, she's not the stepdad, she's the dad who stepped up.
Wait, we don't know that. Maybe that's how there's trans representation.
Maybe.
That's
I mean, CC Mystique and Destiny.
right. That's what I'm saying. Like maybe it's like a situation like that going on. We don't know. But no,
We
but
don't
like, and I
know.
also like, you know, I think it was interesting when Nikki was like, yeah, my mother needs me home, and it's like later that night is the one that he gets taken because
Mm-hmm.
death takes him home.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was a really
Someone,
interesting, like, oh,
yeah, someone pointed out like he was not weirded out when he saw death, and like the language, the way that they spoke to each other, you know, like he kind of points at her, at Agatha, and says like give her a kiss, like, you know, he knows that he's supposed to go with her. And so like, you know, has she been visiting him? Like has she been preparing him because she cares?
mm,
You
Like
know,
in his
like,
dreams, probably like visiting him at, like when he sleeps. Because like another
yeah.
theory I saw floating around there is that maybe Agatha was the reason that Agatha was running this con with Nikki of like killing witches is because she was literally doing that as like a token to Rio to like buy him some more time, because of course the one night that they don't kill anyone, that's the night that he died.
Mm.
So it's like a token was
Mm.
missed or a sacrifice was missed, and that's why she was like, "Oh, this is my opportunity." And he was so comfortable with her because every day was maybe, "Is this the day? Is this the day?" No one was killed in my name, or no one was killed as a token.
Right. Well, I also think, I mean, because it was interesting when we pick up with her. Actually, I went back and looked. So, it was 1750 when we pick up with her at the beginning of episode 9. And at the end of WandaVision, we find out that she was expelled. She killed her coven in 1693. So
Yeah,
she had
okay.
been alone for like 50 something years at that point, turning these, not tricks or whatever, you know, but like kind of pulling this con, which is a lot of time for her to either do it to keep death on her side and keep, you know, her away from Nikki, or because that was just like, you know, she was bound to eventually see death at all of these things, you know, killing all of these witches and all of these places where she's donating bodies, because they say in that recording episode, the uh Alice's trial, when, you know, she says, just like the good old days, like you knock them up and I'll shut them down. Like she was giving her bodies. And it is interesting that they hadn't, uh, you know, they didn't kill anyone in that night she took Nikki.
you know. So that's why I think like the whole them constructing the Ballad of the Witch's Road, like I feel like that could have been shortened. Like this is just
Yeah.
probably like the last critique I had of the series and like this episode in general was they probably could have for sure cut out, like there was just a lot of her and this little boy singing. They definitely could have shortened that and given us like
Right.
a quick meet cute.
Montage.
Yeah, like a montage
Yeah.
of like their meet cute and how they end up getting meet, and then like this like relationship they established where maybe beforehand Agatha was only killing like one witch at a time, and that's when they met
Right.
over this one dead witch's body. But then
Mhm.
the whole thing happened with Nikki, and then she's like, it has to be a coven now of witches. It has to be a more powerful death to keep my child alive, not only just my child but myself too. I mean, we don't know, like that's what leaves us all up to speculation, is because we truly don't know what their meet cute was, what their arrangement was, or if it really just was kill anybody for me, and I love you.
Right. Because again, she had killed her coven 50 years prior. Like, so it wasn't the first time that she realized she could suck off a whole group of witches. Like, she knew what she was capable of. And so I
she definitely knew.
Yeah, she knew she could suck
definitely
off
not
witches.
the first time.
Yeah. So, like, you know, I'm curious, you know, if it was just easy appeasal, or if it was just like, you know, here you go, I'm doing this anyways. So
Easy appeasal.
yeah.
Like easy.
Yep, I definitely said that and was like, those are cute words next to each other.
Easy.
Well, with Nikki's death and her losing her shit with nothing holding her back anymore either, she spends like centuries murdering witches, stealing powers by conning them, by promising the road. And then that's how we get this whole montage of them coming to the realization that Agatha, up until that point, was about to kill one more set of witches. And then all of a sudden, this job that she's been applying for centuries becomes real, and she gets hired. And she's like, what the fuck? There's a door. There's never been a door here.
That, again, like, that was the combination of these two sort of like reveals of what was actually happening. I cannot wait to go back and rewatch the entire thing, because, you know, like you said, the look on her face when the door appears is,
and you see him
now
just
looking
run down. Like,
yes.
Well, I think they give us a different pan of that scene, because I think
They
when
did.
you see it, it's like you see her side profile, and then when it's like the realization that she made that all up and there's a door all of a sudden, she like looks annoyed because it clicks to her. She's like, this bitch's son just made a goddamn road underneath my basement.
Yep. So, speaking of this bitch's son, I was trying to work through, like, so when did she know that it wasn't Nikki? Because obviously in that moment she was like, huh, this is new. There's only one new factor here, and it's this homosexual boy that's been following me. So it must be him. So, like, you know, you have to imagine, she said, like, you know, your tell or whatever. And what Uxie and I, we were laughing about it when we watched it, like, his tell is that he loves witches shit. Like, every single, you know, thing in his poster told us who he was and what he was going to incorporate, just like his mom loved sitcoms. And so he shaped, you know, reality around the things that he loved. And so I'm curious, like, did she immediately know it was Billy and then hope that it was maybe Nikki? Like, because she doesn't find out that it's definitely not Nikki until Rio tells her in like episode 4.
Maybe she thought it was also like a split Billy Nikki situation. She was with us and she thought it was a duel. Like,
yeah, because I mean, now knowing that they were walking along together side by side, created this song, and like he's basically the creator of this fictional road, and him saying take me on the road, I can see how she could have been hopeful. Like, nobody knows about the road and nobody knows what the road actually is other than my son, and here's just like, well, I don't know and I've never seen before, being so adamant about the road. And it's just weird because beforehand it was probably just like female witches approaching her about the road, and now it's like this boy. I mean, assumption, but it's just the way it correlates to her past life and like the present. For sure, she probably hoped it was him, but at that moment when the door actually appeared, and then at that moment where he runs down the stairs, she probably was like, "No, something's off. Like something's way off."
Someone pointed out, you know, if you go back and look at the whole Sparky thing when Tommy or Billy says to Wanda in WandaVision, like, you can do anything, like, you know, bring Sparky back from the dead. And Agatha says, you can do that? And there's this like genuine look of like, oh my God, can you type of thing? And so, you know, I don't think this was we knew they knew that far ahead that they were going to invest in Agatha as a character to give her that direction. But like, what a cool connection to think, like, maybe she thought like, okay, this is definitely some weird shit with the Scarlet Witch's son, and maybe he can also bring my kid back to life. like maybe he can find a way to bring me Nikki.
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember Agatha had like the baby in WandaVision too. Like
Right.
she was like her motherhood has been a part of the character even going back then. And so it's
Totally.
interesting to see that still also.
Alrighty, so Agatha tells Billy, as he's coming to the realization that he may have just killed his coven, she basically explains to him that the road isn't real, that she made it all up. She was already planning on killing them, like we mentioned, and that at least one good thing happened about them going on the road, which is essentially that Jen is still alive and she was unbound and she got to live her life free of being bound. And as Billy's coming to the realization that Agatha is going to be around, he heads back to Vestview to try and banish her, which she, of course, resists having to, like, the whole reason I think that she's holding on and she actually became a ghost and took that calculated risk was because she knew that she could probably hold herself back from moving on because she, at still, centuries later, is still afraid to like face her son. And also, I think her attachment to Billy also kept her there. So it was kind of like a double, a two-sided thing that was holding her back. And so she takes that risk, becomes that ghost. Billy relents and allows Agatha's spirit to guide him at the end. And after sealing the entrance to the road and recording the names of the fallen, Billy and Agatha set out to find Tommy. And then we get no end credit scene. So we don't even know where they went.
No end credit scene.
Which Jack Schaefer wanted and had multiple written, and I'm so mad that they were like, no, that's okay, we're good.
Right.
Yeah,
How dare
Marvel told
they?
me no end credit scenes.
Which, okay, fine. Like, it is kind of, it is something that has adapted into like movie and TV culture for those to be expected. And I think it's kind of good to keep it like surprise because instead of it being like an expectation like it has become.
Why does it have to not be an expectation in the media that I want it for?
I know. Do that for Secret Invasion when no
One
one wants to see
great
anything
idea.
else from Secret Invasion. We're good. No more bad scroll footage.
Mhm.
We're
Well, I
good.
think it's also like a secure or an insurance risk. I think is like they're not trying to promise anything when you know the Jonathan Major of it all. Like something could
Right.
completely knock it off per like production and like plans change again. So I think it's also like an insurance on them to not overpromise and then have to backtrack yet again on something else because someone they hired was maybe problematic or something.
Right. Right. And especially when it's like they're not even that important yet. Like
Right.
yeah, Kang was becoming important, but thankfully, you know, it wasn't like the guy that played Thanos like dropped the hard R on a microphone the day before Civil War came out. Or not Civil War, like Infinity Game. Oh, Infinity War came out. So yeah, I guess that's smart. I really loved the interaction where, you know, he seals the road and writes the fallen witches' names in the cement. It was really beautiful. But one of the things that I was really interested by is Billy does this analog magic to try to banish her, and he like puts the candles in a circle or whatever and holds her personal item, and she's like, you really think that you can just banish me with a personal item and an incantation? And then again he starts to do it, just like we were talking about with Jen and the unbinding. But like my question, is it analog magic that he's doing, or is he just reality warping because that's his power set?
I think it's
like,
reality warping because like in the comic books, I think they also did a good job of showing the direction that his magic is going to go in because like
right.
even when he was using his like blue magic there was like sparks or it was something electricity related, like in his intro like the power outlines were exploding,
Yeah.
the light bulbs are exploding because when we first meet Wiccan in the comics, the only thing that he can conjure are like lightning based attacks. So they kind of pay homage to that with like incorporating that little detail because like Wanda's is very like smoky, very fluid, and his
Wiggly
is very just
loose.
electrical. Yeah, and his is very just electrical charged. So then in the comics he ends up, you know, realizing that his powers are way more than that and he can actually warp reality, and the way that he does like spells, quote unquote, is by like repeating the same thing over and over again in his head and like willing it into existence. So like,
Yes.
I mean, but then again, it's the MCU. They might retcon it and do it like a whole different way where it's not that he can't be that OP because that
Right.
just no gay man should be OP in the MCU or whatever they want to go with,
Right.
whatever their decision is.
Right.
But I mean, they could be one of two ways.
Yeah, I think the like hurried speech will thing is cute. And also kind of even again when he's like running down the road in the first or the second episode, he's going like, is that the door to the road, because we should really get going, and like that hurried speech, like that's kind of how his spells are in the comics. Like they write it in like really tight condensed font, all running into like one sentence. And so it's supposed to give that sense of he's just like repeating something really fast and hoping that it works. And then of course it always does because he can warp reality. But there was also a specific moment that I am praying was Jack Schaefer's gay ass or someone's, witchy ass referencing Prue, because before they leave the basement, he just head nods to the door, and that's how the doors of the basement open. And that's how they end every season of Charmed. Like the first three are Prue Halliwell using her magic to close the door, and they just carry that on through the entire series. That felt like a specific witchy nod, like if you know, you know type shit.
Yeah, because how are you going to make another witch show and a witch show that references so many historical witches or witches of the past or whatever, and not nod to them?
Right. Any overall thoughts on any that? I mean, we obviously fanned out super hard, but hopes for the future, theories or things we know for sure. Like we know Vision Quest is coming. We don't necessarily know if there's an assumption that a character that's been cast is Vision's son, whether that'll be Tommy or Victor Vision, his android son in the comics. What else do we know? We know that there's a whole...
They casted that character. It's another teen character, so like their name is going to be teen in that. At least until the show starts, they might just do that up until like to not make a huge reveal. But it was like reported that they casted another character by the name of Teen, and so they probably won't do what they did with Billy, where it's like a whole season.
Yeah, they can't.
Like, who is this?
Yeah,
that was too much. It's like you can't do a repeat just because it was successful once. I don't think it's going to happen again. But they probably will like expose. Or release who it actually is.
Yeah. Any other thoughts or exciting things for the end of the program?
I'm just happy I thought it just was really good, and I'm just excited to see. Like I don't always leave like excited and wanting more in this kind of way, but I feel like it really left me wanting more of this part of the universe, and so I'm excited for when we get to see more of it.
So I guess a question for like the hopes for the future, like would you want a season 2 of Agatha All Along, or just like an actual spin-off of Agatha and Billy? Because I mean it would still be like a season 2, but just with under a different title or a different, because that's what I'm curious is like how we're going to see them next. Like are we going to see them at the end of Vision Quest? Because if Tommy is introduced in that in some way, shape, or form, and then they show up to kind of tie it all together, like that's what I guess I'm curious about, is like if they're gonna actually do a season 2 or a spin-off, or just introduce him at the end of Vision Quest and then lead off into like Young Avengers or something.
I feel like Young Avengers is where we're going to get a lot of information filled in, just because, again, like the issue that they have, the critique that so many non-nerds have is like, you have to watch all these things to be able to understand what is happening in each of these. Like all the properties are dependent on one another. And I think having, the next big project where we're really getting to know Billy as Wiccan, it makes sense to like, maybe we don't need a whole another show. Maybe we just need them to be the final pieces of the Young Avengers. And so we get that piece, or like, I'm curious and I'm hopeful. I don't know that I want a whole other season, just because not the gimmick, but the plot device that they used of the Witch's Road, with it being him, and like just the way that they brought those, you can't recreate that. I'm sure there's some clever way to do that, but like there is no season 2 for that. Like I'm just excited for whatever the follow-up property is. Like this was very much so the follow-up to WandaVision. What's next? Obviously Vision Quest, but I'm just nervous about that one because it's a boy, and I don't like boys shows. I like girl shows. So I don't know how I'm gonna relate to Paul Bettany, but we'll see.
Very carefully.
Bettany, though, I wasn't really a Vision fanatic in terms of like just nerding out
Vision's
on the
fine.
character, but
Yeah.
Paul Bettany makes him a great character to love.
Yeah, agreed.
But I agree that like
Agreed.
Vision's just okay. Like I've never been like, well, you sure are there. Like that's how I feel.
Right. Agreed. Especially when, like WandaVision getting a spin-off made a lot of or Scarlet Witch getting a spin-off made a lot of sense. There was like momentum of her character building, and she's like crazy powerful. Like, why? Okay, all right. We only got interest in Vision from Wanda's show, which I guess is true for Agatha Harkness, but like, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Exactly. But Uxie loves Paul Bettany, so perhaps we're missing something.
I mean, unlike Paul Bettany, I'm not like a huge actor.
Yeah, no, I know.
I just mean like I love what he's done with the character. I mean, when he delivers a line like "What is love but grief," or "What is grief but love persevering," like you can't deliver a line like that and not just make me, completely
fall in
love with the robot.
Fall in love with the robot, and also because you are the Scarlet Witch. Thank you both for hopping on this Sunday evening post Halloween, post Agatha finale. We've got a lot more fun things to look forward to. Follow us on Real Hot Nerd Pod, and we will see you next time.
Te veo.
Bye. Te veo.